here's why you and your influencers, when you guys start your podcast, it ultimately fails. So one of the main reasons why most of the people, even your favorite influencers, even though they have that influence, not able to sustain their podcast how they planned is because they are modeling the wrong techniques or tactics that were old. And I'm gonna talk about it. Hey guys, what's up? RJ here, back in this video. And in this video, we're gonna be talking about why those old tactics that most of you guys or most of the influencers you follow do not work, and that's why they're not able to sustain that podcast and they don't get enough attraction out of it. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to subscribe to the channel and be sure to hit the notification bell on, and let's talk about it. So what happens with most of the influencers and most of the general audience who plan to start their podcast and they're like, hey, I want to start my own podcast, I want to grow it, I want to make it work out. The problem with most of these people is they're kind of modeling the wrong people and strategies. And here's what I mean. So most of the people, when they're planning to start their podcast, they're following guys like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, Joe Rogan, Alex Friedman, all these guys who can talk about anything and everything. While it works out for them, and one of the reasons why it did, because they've been doing podcasting for the past 10, 15 years, when the competition wasn't there, it was really easy to grow in any general market, whether you are niched or not. It was easy to attract the listener on YouTube or on audio platforms. But now at this day and age, it's not about how generalized you are. It's more around how niched you are in your relevant market and what niche thing you actually want to talk about. If you are somebody who is into the health and fitness niche, you can even niche down one level below, hey, I'm into health and fitness, but I'm helping more nutritionists, and you can create podcasts based on nutrition, interviewing different experts or doing anything, whatever you want to do. But that's how you actually niche it down so that you can become this micro influencer or star in that designated category, not to be just another Joe Rogan. So what happens most of the time is when they're planning to start these podcasts and we start to model these guys, they start talking about, let's talk about what we ate today. Let's talk about what we had in mind based of this opinion, based of that. Well, that is the basic ideology of a personal brand, which is all around stating your ideas, perceptions, all that. If that's actually what you want to do with your podcast, more power to you. I think this video should be it by now. You don't need to watch onward. But if that is not only the case and you actually want to grow your podcast too, then in that case, having a niche podcast and talk about those specific things only on your podcast is really important. You can have another podcast which is completely kind of unfiltered version of your podcast where you like to share all opinions, all ideas, all this, all that, etc. While that is completely doable, I would still highly recommend not doing a podcast that is completely generalized and just focus on one thing. And why it does not work is it doesn't matter how big of influencer are you, and if you're not following the basic framework of running any particular piece of content, whether it's podcast or even in general, you're not able to attract the right audiences. I've worked with some of the really big internet marketers in the industry. I'm not gonna name anyone, but even guys like those who've been doing podcasting for the past 10 years, I've done 4 or 5 different podcasts in the past 10 years. Even for these guys, when they start a new podcast, worked with them closely and they wanted to talk about everything on their podcast, right? And for that reason, when they post some stuff, they're 20 views, 10 views, 15, and then they're wondering why it's not growing, even though it's completely clear why it's not growing, because they're not talking about only one specific thing. They want to talk about pretty much everything. So it's easier to talk about everything all the time rather than to talk about one thing all the time, because that's more boring than the other option. So that's the reason why why the influencers and the people who plan to start their podcast, who are just complete beginners, not able to grow it how they wanted it, because they're just talking about everything broad and all that, etc. If you're somebody who are planning to start their own podcast or making 7 figures or more, just comment down below or the link in the description where you can book up a call. If you're not somebody who's making 7 figures or more, who need the exact step-by-step process of how they can grow their podcast, I have a link down below for you guys too. You can access the course that I have where you can learn how to create, grow, and monetize your podcast with the exact step-by-step process of how you can do it, because you can grow your podcast in few ways, either with less views, make more money, or more views and more money, or more views or less money. So that completely depends upon how you want to take those steps and actions. So if you are somebody who really want to grow and monetize your podcast, there are links down below. And thank you so much for watching. We're definitely gonna see you guys in the next video. Until then, peace out.